I want to talk to y'all today about empowering and educating the next generation of builders and craftspeople. And doing this using a technology called digital fabrication and a system called distributed manufacturing. We're doing this right now to solve the climate crisis and the housing crisis simultaneously. But before we get there, I'd like to just give a little bit of my educational journey. I've never been an educator, but I was a student for 18 years in public school and then at a private university. And I grew up in a town not too far from here, outside of Austin. And when I started, there was about 1,250 people in the whole town. And by the time I had graduated, there were 25,000. It was one of the fastest growing communities in the United States. And those changes were everywhere. Obviously, roads, construction, and watching the transition of farmland into houses really struck near and dear to me and close to home, as much of that farmland was actually my family's that I had grown up on and fallen in love with, and am now being and watching it be taken away and replaced by houses. And I was a typical high school boy, middle and high school boy in Texas. Made pretty good grades, studied football, showed up on Friday nights, thought about football, and that was about the most important thing in my life. And I think that's true for a lot of towns in Texas and certainly the school boards. But I can say with a high degree of certainty that I never really thought about life beyond Friday nights. Maybe play college football and then beyond. And it wasn't until I graduated high school and went and met with my college advisor, and she asked what I wanted to do, was really the first time I thought about what I wanted to do. And again, they didn't offer football as a major. So the next best thing was farming. I was like, I grew up on a farm, I want to be outside, so do you offer farming? And she said, no, we don't offer that. We have environmental studies. You should check that out. And I have this vivid memory of not knowing what environmental studies were when she mentioned it to me. But I thought the word sounded cool, so I agreed and sealed my fate based on the way this word sounded. And I left that meeting and looked up the definition of it. And what I found was basically everything that I'd lived and worked for my entire life and was extremely passionate about and fulfilled. But to think that in 18 years of being in school, I had never heard the words environmental studies. So I took her advice. I pursued that for 4 years and had a wonderful education that I'm very proud to have gotten, but I can say that it was at times depressing, even terrifying. I had friends that actually gave up at times and did not want to pursue the truth of what environmental factors we're facing today. But I carried this light of football and trying to get out and just wanting to take on complex challenges. And so when I graduated, I was ready for it. Let's get a team together, we see what the problem is, let's put a plan and let's execute. So, graduate, I start sending out resumes, and being in Texas, of course, I get a lot of feedback and responses, the first one being from an oil company, wanting me to come out and look at their impacts on rivers. Okay, can't do that. Next one was a highway company wanting me to map caverns actually in Austin to make sure that they could get them done. It wasn't to make sure that the road wouldn't go there. Couldn't do that one. And then finally, I guess the straw that broke the camel's back was I had a 6-figure offer out of college to move to Green Bay, Wisconsin and permit coal mines. So I'm 22 years old, I have a great opportunity to make a bunch of money, start to pay back my loans, and I've got to decide if I want to make a deal with the devil. And I talked with my mom, and she told me, whatever you do, do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. And I liked that idea, so I decided I was just going to start my own business and do what I wanted to do and felt like I could do and be impactful and positive. And if I couldn't find a job, then I'm sure there were a lot of people out there who couldn't find a meaningful position. And so that was the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, and relative to kind of wanting to get out on Friday nights, I mean, it's a full contact sport being an entrepreneur. But as I was thinking about what I wanted to do, I thought back to my childhood and watching this farmland being turned into houses and thinking that, how can we rethink construction, and instead of turning farmland into houses, what if we turned the products of that farmland into houses? In other words, what if we grew our homes and bio-based materials that came from farmland, and maybe that would change the way we think about development and construction. And so that was a good enough idea to get some friends involved and start a company, and got some investors, and really quickly got linked up with some of the leading institutions in the state. And we developed a really robust portfolio of cutting edge technologies that have taken me around the world, and I give talks quite often on bio-based materials. But what I found after we developed these materials and going out to the contractors and trying to sell this to the people who were going to use these things, the people who build the world around us, is that they were obviously interested, they were excited, and wanted to change systems and be more efficient, but they had a much larger issue at hand. And that is, nobody was going into the construction field. They couldn't get enough people involved, enough bodies to actually do the work that needed to be done, let alone implement new materials and processes to do that. So that was a head scratcher. Didn't see that one coming. And I kind of went back to the drawing board, and about that time I got a call from a company out of Charleston, South Carolina, who had been working on this issue for the last 15 years, and some other brilliant innovators out of Charleston. And they saw this coming, right? People these days, people entering the workforce, for whatever reason, construction is not thought of as an attractive career opportunity. It's physically intensive, it's dangerous, there's a low margin of error. You can't really screw these things up, people's lives depend on them. And so they developed and pioneered a technology called digital fabrication through distributed manufacturing. Now that's a mouthful, so let's break it down into two parts. First is digital fabrication. Essentially, think about it like Minecraft or even Paint when you were a kid and you're drawing online and you take shapes, and eventually those shapes become a house. Well, we've done the same thing now. We just take those shapes and that computer-aided design, and we translate that to a CNC router that uses a pretty simple software. CNC routers have been around for 50 years. This is common infrastructure, and it's not very expensive. So we've taken this thing that a lot of kids today are grown knowing and translate that into the real world. Minecraft is a good example. And then those pieces are assembled like a puzzle, and then they're stacked on site like Legos. So I want to draw a distinction real quick between 3D printing and what we're doing. So they're both automated construction in a way. 3D printing is kind of a whole new set of rules, new technologies and equipment that's required. What we're doing is essentially the gamification, and we're trying to meet students where they're at and their knowledge growing up. Kids these days aren't going to take a 3-year apprenticeship to become a skilled carpenter and learn certain trades. So we took what they knew with the existing infrastructure and developed this system of digital fabrication. The other half of this is distributed manufacturing. So to think about distributed manufacturing is you have the centralized large factory typically, right? You go there, you work 9 to 5, and they ship that all over the country or region. Those are often polluting, monopolized, and capitally intensive. With the distributed manufacturing model, we can take existing infrastructure in a smaller setting. So rather than one large, we have many small factories that are closer to the consumer. This does a few good things, right? It improves your local economy, gives new job opportunities, bringing the product closer to the consumer, makes it more sustainable and more affordable. This also just 3 friends now can start to make beautiful homes. You don't need a huge team of skilled carpenters with years of experience. You can go in, design a house, cut it out, stick it together. They're labeled pieces, and really 3 friends could start a very good custom home contracting business. Now the skills required are more akin to computer programming, design, engineering, more than they are the hard labor that we might imagine. And so I just want to leave y'all with, as I got my education in environmental science, it was wonderful, but it was very issue-based and problem-based and very few solutions. All of the solutions that I have found, I had to arrive at on my own. And this is one example, right? Digital fabrication, but there's a plethora out there that I hope that y'all can bring to your classroom and help solve the climate crisis. But houses are just one thing. You can make toys with this system. You can make boats. I've even seen an airplane made. So we're getting back to the craftspeople of 200 years ago, where everyone made their own things in their community. We're just using the tools of tomorrow to do it. Thank you very much.